So, Lara, it's less than 36 hours to the actual voting for the American elections.
Yep.
As of the time of this recording, right? And we've been doing several episodes for the last few weeks already, talking about all the various things. I mean, initially we started off by saying, why are we covering this and what is the lesson for Malaysia? Of course, we'll continue to talk about that in a moment. But today we just want to kind of have a final, I guess not summation, right? A final discussion about where we think the election is going. And every day you are reading some very interesting update here and there, right?
Yeah, I think every now and then you'll get like a lot of exciting news. I mean, just last week we had those ballot box that was being set on fire, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So those sort of things, it's almost like, why did we say that this is a hinge election? Because there's so much thing that is at play. It's almost like they downgraded themselves to like third world sort of voting system where the rules don't apply anymore. So it's kind of interesting to see how everything is kind of like being panned out.
And I think people kind of expect, are we coming to a place of predictions? And kind of reminded me a couple of years ago, remember when we did the last general elections, and I think we did a manifesto 1 week before the elections, and we didn't kind of make prediction, right?
No.
So I mean, one of the things about prediction, which I generally don't prefer to do, is because, of course, there are data here, there are indication, there are subjective feeling, but you can never tell with people making their choices, right? And you can see, look at the last two general elections in America, 2016, 2020, the polls were so far off, right? I mean, they haven't been quite right since Brexit.
2016, yeah.
Yeah. But then it is the other thing is really, I mean, of course, people talk about, you mentioned the word hinge, as in it can cause a nation to go, into one direction or the other direction. But it's not B-O-N-O, right?
No, it's not. I think why there is so much use on the terminology of hinge is also because I think 2 episodes ago we were talking about like the swing states and things like that. So with swing states, I think this election really it goes all the way down to the key battleground states where whichever person that wins will quite likely be the president.
Yeah, the 7 swing states, and every day you have different data coming out. Now we're going to talk about some of these data, but maybe let's start with yesterday. One pollster, supposedly quite renowned lady, and she was saying that Kamala Harris is up by 3 points in Iowa. Iowa is supposed to be a very red state, and other pollsters have said that Trump is up by 10 points. So you're seeing a variance of 13 points, which is unheard of in polling world. And I think it was Ned Silver, right? Formerly of 538. And now he's like one of the more respected pollsters for the election. And he says somebody is going to be wildly wronged in these elections. But what do you make of that? Do you have a perspective or theory about, why suddenly you get respected pollster and, coming out? I kind of share my theory, but do you have any theory pertaining to that?
Well, I think it's really a form of election interference. Personally, I mean, that's the vibe that I get, especially from those renowned posters that are doing this sort of stunts at the last minute. So like what Nate Silver said, someone could be really just thoroughly out by a large margin. So it's interesting because, I mean, she sort of changed her position from June until now. In June, she basically was showing that the poll Ann Selzer. So the
you followed some of the track.
Yeah.
Oh, you went back and see. Good.
So yes, so she was basically showing that back in June that Donald Trump had an 18-point lead over Joe Biden in Iowa. So which is surprisingly big, even considering how much Iowa has trended red over the years.
Yep.
So and knowing this, back in 2020. Iowa voted for Trump by 8 points. So even with this sort of results and historical data, she could still do something like the sort of trending that says Harris is leading in Iowa 47-44. So I can't think of anything else except election interference. It's almost like, hey, let's just talk about a state that is barely sort of in the play for. I mean, you can hardly say that it's an indecisive state, and yet they were using that to sort of like test the water to just see how people will be responding. I think what they are trying to do is really just trying to make the Republicans panic, and especially those who are slightly of a low propensity sort of voters. They will be like, hey, maybe my one vote doesn't count anymore.
Yep.
So I think it's really that sort of suppression that you're seeing.
And it's quite similar to all those celebrity endorsement, right? Like just yesterday, I think Harrison Ford came out and said, vote Kamala. And sometimes you look at what they say and things like that, it's almost like scripted. And somebody was saying that there should be a check to see whether these celebrities are paid from campaign money, because campaign money you're supposed to have an account. And if it's really some kind of payment from PAC or account linked with either president, then it looks very bad, right? It's really like, it's almost like
Bribery.
money politics, bribery. Yeah, but back to the whole poll about Iowa. Remember, I was sharing with you my theory. And the last couple of days, you start to hear people talk about certain supposedly safe blue states were in play. You know, they talk about New Hampshire, they talk about Nebraska, they talk about Maine, and even some people were saying New York was in play. But I was just talking over dinner with Lanshi. I said I felt New York not really in play, because I think one of the things people don't understand is the Electoral College is based on popular vote for that state. So it's not easy to win popular vote in those more liberal places. But you want to win governorship, you want to win the House, you can, because it's based on the seats that you win. So it's quite possible you can form a legislature without having the popular vote. But to win popular vote in New York will be a big ask.
But I reckon, I don't know. I mean, do you reckon that the Democrats, they are pissed because probably Trump may even get the popular vote, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. And people are saying that it's a possibility. And that with all the few blue states that could become red, I think Kamala's campaign will be like, look, we need to shake it out. So why don't we mention one or two states that, of course, obviously they can't mention something like Florida or Texas. That's just too far out. But something like Iowa, which is next to Illinois, a possibility, even though it's plus 10. So my feeling was that they try to use the mainstream media to create, to kind of stop the momentum. And that's the other thing. Why don't we talk about the behavior of media this time around? Because you can see a very contrasting behavior, right? Between, I mean, I call them the legacy media, the mainstream media on one hand. Then you have Elon Musk called it citizen journalism. And of course, he wants to give himself credit. He said, a platform like X is doing that. And this time around, did you hear a lot of suppression on YouTube and Facebook, TikTok? Not really, right?
Not really, but YouTube, I suppose, yes. I mean, especially when we're talking
The Joe
about
Rogan,
the
right?
Joe Rogan. So, I mean, in just a couple of days or 1-2 days, they're already gonna 34
Yeah, because they were
million
like
views.
whacked left, right, and center by everyone.
Exactly.
And probably it's not even top level decision. It could be just a very liberal moderator decided to switch it off. Because you can look at all the big tech leaders try to pander to Trump. You know, like Zuckerberg say, I'm now a libertarian. Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, called Trump personally after his McDonald's event in Pennsylvania. So they're all trying to be cozy with him in case he won, I guess.
I think so.
But anyway, let's come back to that comparison between mainstream media and, I mean, for the lack of better word, we just call them the alternative or citizen journalism. Do you feel there's a air and sense of desperation from mainstream media?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even just going back to the time where Kamala Harris was debating Trump. So I
That
think
was at a high point for her, right?
exactly. I mean, even at that time, there were so many. I mean, the MSN ABC, right? That they were just basically doing a lot of fact checking. So I think that has always been their style. It's almost like they are having a lot to lose this time around. So I felt that's the overall vibe. That's why I think the mainstream media is really like doubling down. I felt like they probably came to a point of no return already. So let's just bulldoze our way through. And then maybe after the election, if things go south, they will just, well, I mean, it is what the pollsters say.
Yeah, and the other interesting events the last couple of days really was Liz Cheney. Trump was making a statement about her being a warmonger and things like that. But somehow some portion of media start to say that Trump wanted her to be killed.
Yeah.
But what I find surprising from that whole episode was that quite a lot of mainstream media people came out and say this is bullshit. So I felt like there's a shift there. It's like not a shift. I'm not quite sure what's the right word. It's not rage. It's almost like resignation. Like some of them, I think the more realistic one kind of felt, okay, I shouldn't say new,
Resign to the fact.
Resign to the fact that maybe it is Trump's turn to win this time. Because if you are a journalist in the first place, you are in media because you wanted to get a feel of the atmosphere, you want to get a feel of the information, like what Rahim Kasam said in his interview. How do you be a journalist? You call everyone you know. You get all the information. So I'm sure they still have all these basic skills. They will have, if you go to any locality, you can get a feel. It's like when people, even in Malaysia election, you go to a certain area, you get a feel whether there's a chance or not. So we look at Green Wave the last time in general election. Some people who were on ground, they actually felt like Perai and all those places, it can be competitive, and it turned out to be true. So I just felt like they, maybe some of them are sensing the inevitable.
I think so. I think even the conservatives, they are trying to refrain themselves from using the word
I see a lot of self-restraint this time.
Exactly. So I think it's kind of interesting because compared to 2020, the vibe is completely different. It's almost like it's almost like I think the Republicans are trying to aim for things to come into full circle compared to 2016. So I think 2016 and what Trump needed to complete in this season, I think that's what they are aiming for. So I felt like that's a very, very good job because even the tactics that they adopt now is very similar to Democrats. Can you imagine like PKR going down to the ground, get a grassroots sort of votes, and this is exactly what Republicans are doing, and that's why you see tremendous and very, very amazing results even just from early voting. So I felt maybe they knew that in order to rise above all this lawfare, they would need to like really, I wouldn't say play dirty, but really play
by the rule, right?
Exactly. So you kind of corner your enemy within the confines of their own rules.
Yeah, of course, we see like in Arizona, Turning Point is doing a great job. And there's also a movement, very interesting, in Pennsylvania Chase. And it's like kind of like a very energizing kind of group. And I just saw one interview, one person, a lot of people kind of accuse Trump's camp, you don't have ground game. That's usually the domain of Democrat, but they have volunteers who have knocked on 3,000 doors in this election cycle. And we don't know how many are there.
Yeah.
So interesting. But anyway, let's talk about some of the recent data and some of what the pundits were saying. Now, I know we talked earlier on, with less than 36 hours to election, all these numbers, are they still meaningful, right? But I really like this analysis, right, by Matthew Boyd of Breitbart, right? And he wrote this article, very, very insightful. I think even after the election, it is still worth reading. And it is called 2024 Election Comes Down to the Wire, which America will turn out on Tuesday. And I think you can read that on Breitbart. But let me just quickly summarize, right? And what he did not do was to predict the outcome. But I don't know if you want to predict the outcome. Maybe later on we will do it, okay, at the end of the show. But what he was trying to do was to give an understanding of what the conflicting data was saying. And some of the observation, right? Of course, by the way, it's kind of shocking that almost 70 million people have voted as of now.
It's just slightly less than half of the registered voters.
Yeah, and then he's just looking at the competing. He look at very reputable data people, Net Silver, New York Times, Korn. A few people. And it's interesting. He quoted mainstream media, and so when you are serious about your industry, you look for the best regardless of their partisanship. And I think that's something that has been lost for the last 10 years, right? People become so partisan that they are incapable of seeing the other perspective. But anyway, he talked about so he kind of look at all these things, and I think he quoted what we mentioned about Silver, that Net Silver said that some people are going to be wildly wronged in these elections. But the other thing which also from Breitbart, another very interesting article just one day before, which is totally different from Matthew Boy, and is by this Rasmussen. Rasmussen, of course, is a national poll. Also, their head poster. So you have the poster, but the head poster is a person actually. So this guy is called Mark Mitchell, and he very boldly predicted a political realignment and a landslide for Trump. I mean, nobody dares to use this word in this cycle, right? Who dares to use the word landslide? But anyway, he explained why, and he said, and he was very kind of frank. He said, I think the pollsters are having a hard time keeping up with, and us included, the ever-changing data. But this is something which, this is my main takeaway from Mitchell. He said, party affiliation means a lot less than whether you support Trump or Harris. Now, I think maybe we need to explain to our voters and our viewers and listeners, right? In US, if you register as a voter, you need to put in your category. Are you a Republican? Are you Democrat? Or are you independent? I mean, I think about it. It's like why don't you just put independent, right? But you see, people are so they're very sure of their support. So when you have all the early voting and early ballot, they are able to track what type of voter you are based on your registration. So for example, they say, 43% Republican have done early voting. It is not 43% vote for Republican. It is 43% of registered Republican, which may or may not necessarily vote for Republican or vice versa. So that's why Matthew Boyd was saying that this data could be very useful or completely useless.
Yeah.
But in this cycle, very different from 2020, was that historically, you see, this is now you see the difference in philosophy and culture. Democrat always vote early, always vote through mail. Republican always show out on the day itself. But as we can have seen the last election, Pennsylvania, Arizona, machine broke down, people are not allowed to vote and things like that, because the whole mechanism was to suppress on actual day voting. That's why people like Jack Posobiec and all these people, they're saying they vote early. So this time, the early vote for Republican really increased by a lot. And that's why there's another question mark that is very, very hard to answer. These early voters, are they simply voters who will show up on the actual day and they just vote early? Or are they actually new voter? And that is a question that nobody could answer. But anyway, my main takeaway from Mitchell's article was that just because you are a registered voter for a specific party doesn't mean anything in this election. But what other things are you observing so far from I mean, there's so many data and things like that, but anything that really kind of capture your attention?
No, I just thought it's interesting that Mark Mitchell, he drew a parallel between the current race and the 1980 Reagan-Carter election.
Yeah, that's like a super landslide, right?
Exactly. So for someone who has a great track record,
it's a very bold prediction. I mean,
indeed, I think even with a lot of the voices in the media that have been very much, I wouldn't say muted, but more restrained this time around, trying to just be just ever so slightly cautious, especially those who are really, really wanting Trump to win. So I think it's kind of interesting that he will make such a bold prediction. So it's almost like either he could also be wildly off as well,
Yeah, and I don't think he's even a Trump supporter. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I mean, someone like Matthew Boyd from Breitbart, obviously a Trump supporter. Someone like Ned Silver, obviously a liberal supporter. I'm not sure. I mean, these days, if you're liberal, you may or may not support Kamala. I'm not sure.
But I kind of have a theory that I think Kamala Camp is a bit pissed off because you have a lot of those who are supposedly liberal that are really coming out strongly to support Trump. I think it's almost like they are very, very much triggered when Trump decided to run for presidential election, and back in 2016, he used to be the Democrats' darling. I mean, even most of the time he was like just voting for Democrats, and yet he decided to, like, when he runs, he is running on Republican ticket. So it's kind of interesting that this time around, as compared to 2020, there's actually more people on Trump's train than not. So I think because of that, they are really, really panicking, and therefore they could only get certain people who are really, really like extremely woke, where you have like Beyonce, you have Taylor Swift, all those sort of people who barely even, I mean, they don't come across as political junkies that would be like wanting to endorse a certain candidate and things like that. And I think even more interesting is also the British medias. They are also trying to, I mean, if you don't study the political landscape in the United States and you're trying to make a certain sort of prediction, I think the media could also stand to lose their credibility of what's left.
But interesting you mentioned about British and other mainstream media, because I really felt like they are more muted this time. You're talking about Guardian, BBC. I just saw one article, Al Jazeera, talking about what does the American elections, what would it mean for, you know, all the different nations. Talk about Middle East, talk about Japan, Korea. You know, there's a group of the mainstream media that tries to make it like if Trump wins, he's going to make it very hard for the allies and things like that. But he's just like, look, you are my ally. You shouldn't take advantage of me. But even then, the whole reporting and outlook are very muted. It's not like 2020. And again, I go back to the word. It's like they have a sense of inevitability. And the only thing I felt like is a major concern for me would be how the Democrats will try to cheat. In fact, we did one episode on the steal. You know, we talk about it's a fits in, right? But somehow that we got some technical problem. But after the election, I think we can revisit.
Most definitely.
Because it's like, you think about some of the things they want to change, right? It's like, just the other day, there was a very immediate lawsuit in Pennsylvania because people are trying to line out to vote. And suddenly at 3 p.m., some police came and said, you cannot vote anymore. The police was ordered by Secretary of State from Pennsylvania, a Democrat. So Republican immediately filed a lawsuit, and a judge say, Secretary of State, you have to allow voting until 5 p.m. and voting is extended for 2 more days. So it's like, why do you want to stop people from voting? Why do you want to make it not so secure, unless, of course, you want to cheat? I mean, I would say it is for the Democrat to demonstrate to everyone that they don't want to cheat. Why are they so afraid of voter ID? I mean, every time I talk to a Malaysian about, do you know that the Blues, the Democrats are opposing voter ID for election? Everyone is like mind blown, right? So I mean, in Malaysia, yes, we have voter ID. Oh yeah, of course, Mahathir go and print IC for some people in Sabah, but that's besides the point. You talk about no need ID, no need birth certificate, no need to have your name on the voters registry. It's bizarre, right?
Exactly.
It's very, very bizarre. But anyway, I mean, so let's kind of come to our concluding thoughts already, right? And now, of course, we kind of want to have a forward view. I mean, earlier on we already said, right, election is not BONO. We experienced that in ourselves in Malaysia, right? 2018, I think so many people made the mistake thinking that we're kind of like in heaven already. Do you remember the first few months after Pakatan Harapan under Mahathir?
Malaysia Baru.
Malaysia Baru, I remember everyone's welcome to Malaysia Baru. But it's like, but we are brought back to reality very quickly, right? And it just shows that election can open a door, it can start a new cycle. But in many ways, you know, Trump merely point to the symptom of the system. He is not going to be the solution, because the solution will have to be the people. So that's why, from that perspective, I'm like, Yeah, I mean, it's very important. If he doesn't win, yes, the Democrat will come in and do more things, but it could result in a greater revolution. But of course, it is easier if you win, because certain things, like I know we talk about Florida many times. 2016, when DeSantis won by 1%, he came in, he put in the voter ID law. Now the Republican is out by 10 points because no more cheating. So it's like that's one of the objectives that some people in Trump's camp are saying they want to do. But anyway, what's the outlook? I mean, if Kamala wins, okay, what's the outlook?
Oh, I think the first thing would be even more illegal immigration. Basically, I mean, you basically have a borderless United States. So,
Yep.
and even more globalist looking, where there will be a continual funding to Ukraine-Russia war and things like that. So, I think it's really more. In a lot of ways, it's quite scary to think that she will win another term, because knowing how the Americans were suffering and even nationwide. So, and more so, I think now China is showing the fist and really just waiting and see which one will be winning.
It's very interesting you mentioned China, because so many people here, especially the Chinese community, because of their cultural and business tie, they seem to look at this election from that lens only. And I guess especially more with the older generations, they kind of are like a bit happy and proud that China is doing well. So I feel like they have that kind of that kind of zero sum game. For China to be up, the West must go down. They have this kind of mindset. So I feel like they look at it from that lens. But it's interesting that I was just talking to another friend, which has a different perspective. I mean, he's like, look, the reason why the world is in such a mess is because there's no leadership from US, from Ukraine war to all the economic problem and things like that. So I guess that's one of the things we mentioned very early on, why we're interested. What happens there kind of impact us one way or another, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So of course, the other thing about actually initially I kind of put in my note here, Kamala Harris represents status quo, but now I think about it, it's not going to be status quo. It's going to be worse than status quo, because she will just double down on everything. And somehow she has something to prove, right? She has to prove that she's different from Joe Biden. So what better to do than to go even to the more extreme position with abortions, with the transgender. These are the cultural issues. To the big government. Did you read the recent news about the squirrel that was killed, right? Peanuts. Yes. It's very interesting. I just find all these small detail could be the difference between who finishes first and second. Some people might read that news and it's like, okay, I'm pissed off, I'm going to vote now.
True, that's true.
But anyway, what about Trump? If Trump wins, what is the outlook?
I think I'm actually hopeful that there will be even more decentralization because of what he has actually demonstrated in the first term, 2016, and really I think Roe v. Wade will be just one of the many first of many to come in terms of a lot of decentralization. So it's almost like he's really trying to bring back like capitalism into United States once again, where everyone will be prosperous. So I'm kind of hopeful. And especially seeing how our government here has rolled out one of the most progressive budget ever and one of the biggest budget ever. And I think with that, with what he has promised, the tax cuts and tariff imposition on those other nations, I think that will really, really provide a model, especially for Malaysia. And it's almost like, I mean, I don't wish bad for our leader. It's just that I think some of these things are not working. And especially you're talking about 2% tax on a dividend. The company is already being taxed. So, and you also have like a lot of implosion that is happening with the Mahakaya and really like on their own people. So those sort of things, I'm actually very hopeful that because Trump has demonstrated a different kind of model, which is more superior, not saying that Malaysian model is less superior in that sense. It's just that you provide a way for everyone to be able to prosper, not at the expense of those who are rich, because the rich have worked really, really hard to get there. So I think he's really gonna put like a nail to the coffin on the socialism and even communism, like even neo-communism that we are seeing now.
No. Yeah, it's interesting you talk about decentralization because he brought in RFK, right? And RFK, of course, is more of a libertarian. It's almost like the the conservative, not even conservative. It's like the opposite, the alternative to Bernie Sanders, right? So those kind of thing. And so RFK talk about some of the things he wants to do, and Elon Musk talk about some of the things he wants to do, and Ron Paul, Rand Paul's father, who is one of the first, the OG libertarian of this generation, and he said he was willing to work with Elon and RFK because if anyone represents decentralization, it will be Ron Paul. So very interesting that you get these kind of people who are supposedly more liberal in outlook, and they are now tagging along. Oh, anyway, so I mean, we kind of mentioned already, the impact on Malaysia, some of the lessons we learned and things like that. But anyway, let's kind of close already. And I mean, we can close with kind of prediction. Now, prediction doesn't mean it has to be the result, okay? But it could be like, because maybe I can start because I really felt like even, I mean, do I think there will be result? I hope there will be a clear result because if it's very, very close, you can imagine both sides will continue to, it will be like 2000 Bush versus Gore times 10, times 100 litigation. Can you imagine litigation across all the 7 states if they are decided by 10,000, 20,000 or 30,000 vote difference? So that's one of the things I can foresee might happen if the outcome is very, very close.
Well, I think there could be yeah, like you, I'm hopeful that the certification will actually be done within a day. But I felt like,
I mean the result lah. I mean certification will come a few weeks later.
Exactly. Sorry.
But of course, for kind of peaceful transition to happen, you need one of the candidate to concede, and for one of the candidate to concede, it has to be very clear cut. Yeah, but anyway, continue.
I think the transition might not be as smooth. I actually do think that the warfare is going to continue all the way up to January, even with a very clear winner. I think that's the vibe. So even after 5th of November, I think generally the Americans will still need to be quite cautious and really just be very, very mindful and just have that sort of to do everything that they could to ensure like a peaceful transition. So because I don't think, I mean, my gut feeling is that Trump will win. It's just that I don't think the Democrats will be very, very happy about it. Yep. So they would actually try the best to like just make things terribly tough for Trump to take over.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, you kind of mentioned you felt he has a chance to win all the swing states, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, then of course it really depends whether Kamala can manage to steal some of the other states, like North Carolina or maybe Georgia, that kind of thing. So yeah, but if I mean, I also felt like based on all the weeks of just immersing with the news, and I mean, it will be impossible not to have a position, right? So I also felt like Trump could win, but maybe just kind of squeak through, maybe 300 plus electoral college vote. And that is the reason I feel there will be continuous warfare and dispute all the way until Congress. So that's another thing. I think Steve Bannon was saying that it is imperative that Republicans also win Congress. Because if Congress is won by Democrat, they may just come out and say, we refuse to certify election. Oh, there will be civil war, man. That will be unheard of.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's all the time we have for today. And the next time we come back, I think, we'll see whether we want to continue covering. I mean, it has been interesting, right? Just to cover. I know people are like, why are we doing this? But I just felt like, in the weeks and months to come, some of the things we have discussed here will be useful even in unpacking what's happening in Malaysia, because you can see some of the implosion already, right? That is happening.
Yep.
So until next time, until next week, that's it for now.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.